If you're 60 and you've just looked at your pension balance, you're probably staring at the biggest number you've ever seen in your life. And you're still too nervous to enjoy it. Everyone's using the word bubble right now, pointing at the American stock market and comparing it to 1999. But if you're sitting in a UK pension, that's not actually your biggest problem. There's a second risk hiding inside your portfolio that has nothing to do with whether AI earnings are real, and on its own, it could cost you 15% of your pension's value without a single share price moving. Hey, welcome back to Pension and Benefits Guide, the channel that cuts through the noise so you know exactly what matters for your retirement. Today we're talking about currency risk, something most people retiring this year have never had to think about seriously, because for most of your working life, the pound and dollar moved together. It matters now, right when you can least afford it. Because the real danger isn't whether the AI bubble bursts, it's sequence of returns risk. A drop in your first year or two of drawing income can mean the difference between a pension that lasts into your 90s and one that runs dry in your late 70s, even if the long-run average looks fine on paper. If you've got a good balance and still can't relax into it, that's normal. It just means nobody's explained the actual mechanics yet. So let's do that. First, a quick comparison. The FTSE 100 pays around 3% dividend yield. The S&P 500 pays closer to 1%, one of the lowest in over a century. That gap exists because investors are betting on future growth over current profit. The Shiller-Cape ratio for the S&P 500 sits around 40 against a long-run average of 17. Translation: the market's priced for everything to go right, with little room for disappointment. Here's the part that matters, even if AI turns out fine. Around a third of the S&P 500's value sits in just 7 tech companies. If those 7 fell 30%, the whole index would drop roughly 10%, even if the other 493 companies didn't move. Most people holding global tracker funds never chose this concentration. It built up quietly while the US market outperformed. And this lands at an awkward time. The personal tax allowance has been frozen at £12,570 for years, while pensions and wages rose around it, leaving less room for a bad year. Now suppose the AI earnings are real and the bubble argument is wrong. You could still lose 15% of your pension's value in pound terms without the American market falling at all. That's not about AI. That's currency risk, and almost nobody talks about it. Here's how it works. Picture the S&P 500 flat for a year, no crash. If the pound simply strengthens back toward levels it's held for good stretches of the past couple of decades, your American shares are worth roughly 15% less once converted to pounds. Nothing about the business has changed. The loss happened entirely in the exchange rate, quietly in the background of your statement. So what do you actually do? First, own more assets priced in pounds. Gilts and FTSE 100 shares don't carry currency risk since they're already valued in what you'll spend. Second, lean into that yield gap. That 3% FTSE income lands in pounds regardless of exchange rates. I used to tell people to just buy the world and ignore the UK market. I was wrong. In 2026, boring is what pays your bills while US tech investors sweat every earnings call. Third, if you hold international funds, check for a hedged share class. It won't boost returns, but it makes them more predictable. None of this means selling out of the US or timing the pound. Nobody can do that reliably. It just means your retirement shouldn't sit entirely on one currency bet you never chose. Let's make this real. Dave turns 66 this year, but his state pension doesn't start till 67, leaving a 12-month gap. Now picture a 20% market correction hitting at the same time the pound strengthens 10%. Without a plan, Dave sells S&P 500 holdings near the bottom just to cover living costs. Those units are gone, they can't recover. That's sequence of returns risk in its rawest form. But here's the important part. Same crash, same currency move, except Dave built 3 years of living costs in cash inside an ISA beforehand. Now he doesn't sell a single share. He lives off cash and FTSE dividends while his American holdings get time to recover. The PLSA puts a moderate retired couple's cost of living around £45,400 a year. 3 years of that is the real number a buffer needs to cover, not a token few thousand. The difference between these two Daves isn't luck or better stock picks. It's whether he was forced to sell at the worst moment or had breathing room. Quick favor, if this is connecting dots for you, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment on where you're at in your own retirement journey. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people in your exact situation. So why is moving to cash so hard when everything looks like it's still climbing? It's fear of regret, completely normal, even with enough to retire comfortably. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're human. The fix isn't timing the market top. Just work out how many months you need to bridge before your pension income starts. Move only that amount into a cash ISA or money market fund, and leave the rest invested. You're not abandoning growth, you're ring-fencing what you can't afford to lose. Quickly, 3 steps for this year. 1. Timing. From April 2027, the cash ISA allowance drops to £12,000 under 65. Right now, you can still put the full £20,000 into cash, so this tax year is the easier one to build your buffer. 2. Shift a portion of concentrated US growth funds into UK equity income or broader global value funds, not abandoning the US story, just balancing it. 3. Check your numbers. The new state pension sits at £12,547, just £23 below the frozen allowance. So almost any drawdown on top lands in the 20% tax band. Take £5,000 out and you'll keep close to £4,000 after tax. Know that before you set your drawdown level. So the AI bubble might burst or it might not. Nobody actually knows. But for your pension, it doesn't have to be the deciding factor. Hold more in pounds, keep a real cash buffer, and check your numbers against the tax allowances every year. You've put in 40 years to get here. Don't let a currency swing you never chose decide when you finally get to stop. So, tell me in the comments, do you already have a cash buffer in place? Or is this the first time you've really thought about currency risk in your pension? I read every comment. Stay subscribed. There's more coming on the UK side of retirement most channels never touch. Because retirement was never about reaching the highest number on the statement. It's about reaching the most certain one. See you in the next video.